So, I cycled across America on Route 66, LA to Chicago, and then beyond. And I'd like to tell you about the beautiful people I met along the way. And it's my tribute to people. This whole trip was really not intentionally about beautiful people, but it became all about beautiful people once I got on my way. I started in Los Angeles with a Walmart bike. I walked to the Walmart and assembled it in the parking lot and got on my way. 5,465 kilometers, 30 days. Yeah, I'll tell you about it. And also tell you about all the beautiful people I met. Getting back to my hometown in Canada and auctioning off Rocky, what I eventually called my G1 Ozark Trail Explorer. A great bike, $250 from Walmart. And I just wanted to show all the puke-ass people out there that you don't have to spend $5,000 on a bike to go across a continent and really enjoy yourself and have an adventure. So, March 14th, I got on a plane, Incheon Airport in Korea. There's me. I got my hair cut nice and short because it was going to be a while till my next one. I really didn't know how long it would take me at all. I just said, just get out there and the rest will happen. And I think that's a good message for everybody. There's my bike. I put the wheels on and the kickstand and the pedals and the seat and stood her up and took a picture. And then I did a lot of other little things, putting all my bags on. I brought about 14 kilograms of extra stuff that went onto the bike. And this was at Southgate, somewhere in Los Angeles, I guess the middle part. And then I just headed up the San Rafael River and headed for Azusa. And then places beyond on Route 66. Good old Rocky. I didn't get far the first day. I just went about 10 kilometers and put up my tent and shivered. It was the coldest day in living history in Los Angeles, -4. But I woke up really early, even before the sun got up, and headed out. And early in the morning, I was in Fortuna, near San Bernardino, and outside of Los Angeles. And I met my first beautiful person, the real beautiful person, Jose. Mexican, and working, been 10 years with a couple kids and a wife, landscaper. He was waiting for things to warm up. You can see the snow in the background, or frost. And we biked a good 5 kilometers and then had breakfast together at Denny's, my first big breakfast. When I think of America or Canada, I think of breakfast. And just a wonderful person. He told me all about his life, and I told him about the bike, and he says, I gotta get me one. Oh, por favor, por favor. It was a wonderful, good start to my first day. And then I climbed way up to Victorville and Barstow. Took a big right and headed out to Amboy Crater. And on my way to Amboy Crater, the weather was just perfect. I got a tailwind. I was making time. I was doing video calls to all my friends, and life was good. And I met these fine fellows, Terry and Terry. Terry Sr. on the right and Terry Jr. Father and son from Pittsburgh, as you could guess. Probably named after Terry Bradshaw. pulled into a Shell station, and they're looking at my bike and my rig, and we had a good laugh together, and they told me about their trip, father and son tour across the United States, and they're heading for Colorado Springs. Just lovely to see a father and son doing this kind of stuff together. It was lovely. I camped out at Amboy Crater under the great big full moon. Look it up. I think it was March 14th, 15th, 16th. And then I met Michael from Lawton, Arizona. I had to take a detour and go along I-40 and on the interstate for 70 miles, no water. There was nothing. Next rest area I got to, it was closed, under construction, and I was just dying. And there on the side of the road was Michael in his Jeep, and he gave me a few juices. He didn't have any water, and he told me his story. What a great guy, helping me out, getting me on my way. He was filling his Jeep with gas because California is so goddamn expensive. It's about twice as much for gas. So he just carries, gas containers in the back of his Jeep, and he was trying to get home. He told me there might be some hotels there because there's some casinos and I could get some cheap hotels there, but I ended up deciding to stay in Needles instead. Thank you, Michael. And I stayed at Needles on the Colorado River, the border between California and Arizona. Motel 6, one of many motels I stayed in, cost me around $3,500 in motel fees for my whole trip. I intended on camping a lot, but it was just too damn cold most of the time, or rainy or snowy or everything else. I rolled the dice, but it didn't work out in my favor. But Ajit, as you can guess, he's from Bombay, Mombasa, India, but has been in America for 25 years, running the hotel. We talked about education and language and all the languages he knows. It's just incredible. They all speak Hindi and then English and their local language, and he speaks Gujarati, and talked about education. That's my thing, and I just love meeting these positive people. We sat outside 6 a.m, hard worker, early to rise, late to bed, and had coffee and just talked about life. It was great. Thank you, Ajit. From Needles, I headed way into the unknown. Route 66 goes way up into the mountains. Not huge mountains, but 1,300, 400 meters up there. I got to Oatman with all these donkeys and classic western town. Tour buses came from another highway, and so the town was quite full for, I think it was a Monday. And I met Myron and Sue from Wisconsin, and I had a beer because hadn't had any beer for 3 or 4 days in my trip, and this crazy saloon was there, and we had a great discussion about life and their life near Green Bay. They'd been visiting their daughter in San Diego, and then they rented a car and they're going to drop it off in Phoenix, and they saw some of the western United States. Beautiful people. And then I was heading out of Oatman, and reminded me of my brother-in-law Joe, who just passed, Jose on the left, and his 2 sisters, and they're crossing America and just exploring it. And they're from the Azores in Portugal. Beautiful islands. Get there if you haven't been. And just really chatty people and wonderful, smiley, enjoying life. And they brighten my spirits. And basically, that's what I loved, meeting people. Just the energy was contagious and just kept me going, doing hundreds of miles every day. And Lynn, I rolled down from Oatman into Kingman, 2 flat tires. Fortunately, low pressure and big fat tires. I could just kind of go at a slow speed. Brakes failed, so I had to walk my bike going down some of the steep parts from the mountains. But I got into Kingman and I asked Lynn, first person I met, where can I find a bike shop? And he just told me 2 blocks, the best ever. And yeah, I'll tell you about it in a moment. Lynn was getting his bottle of liquor, ex-military. I found so many in the West have been in the American military, have some sort of small pension. It's by far the biggest employer in America. And after meeting him, I cried like a baby. He reminded me of my dear friend Bob, Alabama Bob, who had passed a couple years ago from alcohol too. But that's another story. And then I went to go to the bike shop, and the bike shop was closed. It was Monday, so I must have been in Oatman on Sunday. But outside the bike shop was Don. Don, 82 years old. He sang me songs. He was like watching YouTube on his phone, loud as hell. You could hear it a whole block away. And what a character, from Michigan. He told me about the story when the Lions finally won the Super Bowl. And he'll remember it till his deathbed, he tells me. And yeah, told me all about Trump and why he loves Trump. And God bless him. He's carrying on in Kingman. So the next day I stayed at a hotel and I had to get my bike fixed. I had 2 flats. I couldn't carry on with those tires and the flat situation and the brakes not working. Bike was a wreck because I just patched it together in the parking lot in LA, and I'd gotten, just 1,000 kilometers or so out here already. And I met Eddie, what a gem, and Myra, the dog, in his bike shop called The Spokesman. It's like bike repair, parts, sales, conversation, right on his door. He's old style. You don't find people like this anymore that just do such a great job. They know everything. He could fix whatever problem you have on any bike. He did 10 years apprentice, originally from Kennebunkport, Maine. We had a good talk about Maine. And he really said he had a dream when he was a young man, and that he would work in a forgotten profession, a dying profession. He always thought it would be like shipbuilding, which, there's lots of that in Maine and Kennebunkport. But no, he found himself being a bike mechanic, which is a dying profession, but a beautiful one. He has more knowledge about the intricacies of bikes than you could ever imagine, and I just loved listening to him, his passion. And he patched up old Rocky, put some latex in the new tires and tubes, and tuned everything up, and I got on my way later that day. It was a late day, but I still made 120 miles to Seligman, and a beautiful ride along the rim of the Grand Canyon, even though I started at 1 o'clock. Thank you, Eddie. You renewed my faith in quality, both quality as a person and quality in the work you do, and doing a good job. Thank you. And yeah, next was this beautiful person who I met a few times, but we just sort of waved. And then after Seligman going to Flagstaff, we had to pull onto the interstate, and it was like -4. We're all bundled up. And oh my God, dear Rob, he just pulls up alongside me in his yellow Harley. 1300 cc. I don't know too much about bikes, but he said he loved it, had an extra engine, and he was cruising around. He had started in Florida, where he's from, and visiting old friends all across the West. And he said to me, like, God, it's so goddamn cold. Why are we out here? And I said, I don't Jesus know. And he said, well, you know what my mama told me? My mama told me, when you're dumb, you better be tough. And we had a good laugh. And he got off his bike, pulled it over a little bit, and put his arm around my shoulder, and we had a really good prayer about our mothers. I'm not a religious man in that sense, but it did me good. It did me good. Thank you, Rob. Thank you. And then I headed to Flagstaff. And along the way, I met this beautiful woman, Virginia, at Meteor Crater, Arizona. She runs a RV park and a big gas station. And Virginia was just all smiles and happy. And I just love that type of person that's just, I don't know, it's just grounded. She was grounded. And I went about 5 kilometers, you know, off 66 to go down to Meteor Crater, and there was nothing there, and it was like Tuesday, Wednesday, and no cars, nothing. It was cold. I thought it'd be interesting. Wasn't too much, but made the whole detour worth it, Virginia. Thank you. And I kept battling on, trying to get my way to New Mexico. And just before New Mexico, along I-40, I pulled into a Shell station, and I met Mary, who runs the whole goddamn thing. It's a huge Shell station. And she must have like 20, 30 employees there. She's Navajo. Told me all about what the nation and the community are doing to, you know, support indigenous people. And she insisted on a photo by the sign outside the gas station. Thank you, Mary. Wow, you made my day. She wanted to give me all these fruits and things, but I had so much stuff already on the bike, so thank you, Mary. Then I continued on to New Mexico, and I crossed into New Mexico, and I got to the Continental Divide, where the rivers go west or east. And I saw this guy standing there, like really, really haggard, and it was getting late in the day, and he looked like he couldn't continue, but I wandered over after taking a photo at the sign for the Continental Divide, and I met KG, same age as me. He was doing the same thing as me, Route 66 on his specialized bike. He's from Tunisia originally, landed in America in Kalamazoo, and eventually into California, and made a life and wife and kids, and he was heading to Boston. So I'd caught up to him, and believe it or not, we only spoke for 5 or 10 minutes, and compared bikes and etc., etc. But for the rest, even up to now, we email each day, and he just made it to Boston. So KG, way to go. He's going to his daughter's graduation in Boston. He made it across the continent, and a beautiful person, really just exploring his own life and himself through a trip like this, just like me. Yeah, the road was long. Albuquerque never seemed to come. It's somewhere in the distance out there. But I carried on. There's old Rocky with all the gear, 14 kilograms, plus, 12 and a half of the bike. I got through Albuquerque, or just before Albuquerque, and then I got into New Mexico, and I got to this little place after a state park, Tucumcari, all filled with like the old relics and just the dying of Route 66. You see it a lot. The bypass and I-40 killed all these towns. Tucumcari was filled with them. And just as I exited Tucumcari and went to go on I-40, I met Sean from Lubbock, Texas. But she somehow made her way down there. Her mom had died and passed there, and she was working at a Conoco gas station. I drank so much coffee on my trip, and I pulled in there just desperate for a coffee before I got to the interstate and headed to Texas. And the midpoint, I was trying to reach the midpoint for the night. And Sean said, we don't have anything on. I just started my shift, but just you wait. Give me a few minutes. And she got me the best damn coffee west of the Mississippi, and we had a good chat about life. She told me, like, she doesn't know why she's in that town, but she says there has to be a purpose. I know there's a purpose. And that's a beautiful message. Wherever you are, whatever you're doing, there's a purpose to it. Find that purpose, and your life will brighten up, definitely. But her KD Lang-esque way, she just made me roar out of there, and I reached the midpoint in Texas in fine fashion. There I am. The road is dead straight right through that part of New Mexico and Texas. Definitely. Just all those hydro pools that reminded me so often of Jesus Christ on the cross, but that's another story. And I was carrying on. And I reached the midpoint of the Route 66, LA to Chicago, the Mother Road. It's just a once in a lifetime road you got to journey on. So much to see, and so much history, and so much time to contemplate, how our civilization has changed, and the role of cars in our life, definitely, and trucks and highways and interstates. But I rolled into the midway point, and I met Jason and his wife Kelly, originally from Ohio, and only a year ago they'd bought this location after just rolling through and deciding, let's sell everything. We've raised 8 kids. Yeah, I saw the big picture of all their 8 kids. And Jason and I sat out there late that evening. It was a glorious sunset. This is in the morning. He made me coffee and helped me get on my way. Allowed me to use my tent in the back of their shop. There was a backyard. And just beautiful, lovely people. What could I say? I could tell you stories about Jason. I got to know him in the hour or two that we were together so much. But he's a car mechanic. He's done tons of stuff, but his passion is restoring old cars, and he's currently restoring one GT, one of two in the whole world. One other one is in a museum, and yeah, just a great person and a passionate person about what he does, and he does it, to the best of it he can. Then I went through Amarillo. It was hot through Texas, and then I got more kind of coldish weather in Oklahoma. Rolling country, kind of like where I'm from in the northern Canada. Lots of farms and cows and horses staring at you. And I kind of detoured off of Route 66 by accident, and I went across this river called the South Canadian River, and soon enough I saw signs of Canadian County, and everything was Canadian high school, Canadian tool and die, Canadian wheat, and Canadian everything. And I rolled into this little country town trying to get back on Route 66 called Calumet. Just a one-horse town with a gas station and these girls working in the gas station. And they went nuts when they heard I was from Canada, because they'd never met a Canadian, even though they went to Canadian high school and Canadian everything in Canadian County. And beautiful, beautiful people. And I warmed up there. My feet were constantly cold, but they got me on my way, trying to make it to Oklahoma City. And I made it to Oklahoma City, and then I head north towards Tulsa, and I met this fine gentleman, John Lawrence. I was about 4 miles short of my hotel in Sapulpa, just south of Tulsa. I had a gorgeous day. I love that ride between Edmond, just north of Oklahoma City, and Tulsa. But I got a flat, and my pump wasn't working. I couldn't blow it up. I don't know what was wrong. Couldn't fix it. So I said, oh, shit, I'm just going to walk to the hotel. John Lawrence pulls over in his great big diesel truck flatbed. This guy has an MBA, top of his class. He has a civil engineering degree. Smart as hell. He told me some things about, Imperial and the British metric system, all that stuff. And yeah, he should be on Jeopardy. But he's so kind-hearted. He drove me right to my hotel, said, I'm staying here. We're going to get your bike fixed. Go check in and just come back out. So I came back out. He drove me to the gas station. We changed the tubes on my bike. He fixed my pump, his engineering wizardry. And yeah, I was ready to go. And God bless you, John Lawrence. You made my day. Totally uncalled for. You just stopped and picked up the stranger at the side of the road. Thank you so much. And then I went through Tulsa and then through the rest of Oklahoma, and I hit Missouri. And the tires were just giving me flat still because, cheap Walmart tires, but they did pretty well. They got a couple thousand kilometers. And I pulled into Springfield, Missouri, and boy, was I happy that I did. It's a beautiful town, really. So many towns are dying because of Route 66, but Springfield, Missouri, go once in your life. It's really revitalized. And I met Tim and Steve and the staff and at the SBC Community Bike Shop. It's run by a foundation at the Fairbanks Community Center, and they restore bikes, all the old garbage bikes that you find everywhere. and provide them free to people to get to work or to use. They also help them with employment skills and upgrading. The place is a gem, the Fairmount Community Center, Fairbanks Community Center. Tim, I shook his hand, and it's like, Jesus, what did you do in your life? And yeah, he's a jack of all trades, but an expert mechanic too. And I asked a few people at the Mud House where he told me to go have lunch after I got my tires changed by them, and they fixed up old Rocky, got Rocky ready for the road. And they said, yeah, Tim is a saint. And I do believe so. I'm going to write the new Pope Leo and maybe nominate him. Jesus Christ, he's a saint. Thank you for the good work you do, Tim, and everybody there, Springfield, Missouri. Kept going through Missouri, hitting big rain. Oh my God, once in 500-year rain. I was damp for like 3 or 4 days. And I got to Danny's gas hole, and I said, "Are you Danny?" And he said, "Hell no." And it was Brian, a really understated guy. Never thought he'd be doing a big gift shop, candy shop. He sells popcorn all over America. He bought the place a couple years back from Danny, who had put up the world's largest rocking chair. It's about 5 stories. But anyways, Brian got me hooked on licorice, and for the rest of my trip I was hunting out this Australian licorice. Oh, that stuff's so good when you're riding your bike. But it's just near Cuba, Missouri, and a brilliant, beautiful person, Brian. Danny's gas hole. And then the bike, Rocky, got a spoke broke. And luckily enough, usually when spokes break, I can't carry on. But the bike I taped it to another spoke and just was able to carry on through Rollo, and finally got to Bourbon, where I met Steve at Bourbon Cyclery. And for $30, and he worked because it was hard. It was on the back wheel, and he had to take everything off and do everything. He got me a new spoke and, checked everything else out too. And we chatted about hockey. He's a big hockey fan and lived in Minnesota. And traveled the world. Really smart guy, well educated, well traveled. He'd always done things mechanical, and has traveled the world doing that. And really enjoyed my time there, even though it was raining cats and dogs. And if you ever pass through that part of the world, get to Bourbon Cyclery. So I carried on, and I stayed in this little town, Eureka. I couldn't get to St. Louis. It just rained, and I had the roads were all washed out. Hypothermia. But early the next morning, I headed into St. Louis and did all St. Louis and the Arch, and then I crossed into East St. Louis, and I got totally lost. And this fine gentleman was sitting beside the road. Officer Juan Fowler gave me his business card even, and said, "Up the road, if you have any trouble, just give me a call and I'll sort it out for you." We had lots of laughs when he heard about the Walmart bike, and really cheery. And he got me on my way back up, I think it was Highway 3, heading north through Illinois. And yeah, made my day. It was an early morning. I'd already had like 5 or 6 hours of rain, and things started to clear up. I got a good breakfast after that, and yeah. Officer Fowler, God bless you. Later that day, after walking my bike through flooded out roads, I came into this town called Edwardsville, And when I got to downtown, it was there's all these people and honking horns and blocking the street, half blocking the street. And I pulled up and I said, "What's going on?" And these two ladies jumped out and told me what was going on. And it was the hands-off protest against Trump. And Betty and Sue just took to me when I said I'm Canadian, and they said, "Oh, we apologize. Like, we're not against Canadians, and don't fall for all that stuff." And so Betty and Sue, you kept me going right up until that small little next town. I finally, shivered and shook in my hotel room up the road, and I survived, and all because of you. The next day, I was heading more north towards Chicago through Illinois, and I got to Staunton early in the morning and had a coffee and bought some whiskey to pour in my coffee. And I met Ram from Andhra Pradesh in the south of India. And we had a great talk as I waited for my feet to goddamn well warm up. And utter brilliance in how he served all his customers coming in as I watched him I was drinking my coffee, and in between we talk and chat, and he'd tell me all about the beaches and the beautiful nature of his part of the world in India. And you'll find many Indians in the gas stations and hotels all across America. God bless you, Ram. I hope you're doing well. You're a gem. And I continued through Illinois and met at my next gas station stop, Friar Tuck's Shell Station, Jenny and Jim. I was really dying for a coffee, and I got in there and the regular coffee was on, but Jenny says, "If you like this French roast, just wait a minute." And I said, "Yeah, I'm all about French roast, I'll wait." So Jenny and I got to talking, and she told me about her life and all her horses and her farm, and she grew up in a trucker family and been all the states across America. And then Jim, he runs the Shell station, worked there for 30 years, full of laughter and chuckles and high spirits. And just a personification of the people and beautiful people you'll meet across America on your journey. Thank you, guys. Just south of Springfield, you'll meet them at their Shell station. And I continued on. Finally, I got tired of that north wind beating at me as I tried to get to Chicago. And just before Chicago, I headed east, and I got to Indiana, and I got to Westville. I'm trying to get on my way to Valparaiso, Indiana, and I met Al and Charlie at Indian Casey's. I like the Casey's gas stations. They had these machines with really good coffee. And as I was warming up, it was cold. It was snowing, actually. Charlie told me about all his days biking between the towns locally, and how he would bike between the towns and then stop at each library and read a book and then go to the next one. And he also told me about lotteries, and there's lots of people buying lottery tickets, and we got a chuckle about how somebody had won a big, huge jackpot, but the goddamn corporation had taken everything and the employees don't get nothing. But we were able to laugh about it, and just a typical person that's so beautiful, helping people get from here to there and do their own jobs too. Thank you so much, Charlie. And then it just began to snow so heavy. I got up to this place called Edwardsbury near Highway 12, and I was going to go up the Michigan Peninsula, up to Northern Ontario, where I was destined. But I pulled into this McDonald's and I met Brad, retired, 80 years old. He says McDonald's makes the best sundaes. He goes there every day for his coffee and sundae. And he was a coppersmith for 35 years. He says they're not around anymore, these local small places, melting copper. Used to live out in Eagle Lake, but he moved into the bigger town here. And he's happy, and he just does his daily thing and lives his life. And just gave me some energy. He reminded me of so many people in my own life. And I turned right and I turned east, and I was trying to head for Detroit from there. And yeah, I stopped in Sturgis, and then I stopped in Brooklyn by the Michigan International Speedway, where the motor F1 and all that is. And then I made it into Detroit, and it started to warm up, and I had a beautiful day. And just as I was passing Dearborn, heading for downtown, I came upon Herman, and he was coming out of a moped shop. He just bought a moped. 77 years old, and he didn't look a day over 50. And we sat there for like about an hour beside the street, and he told me all about Detroit. He's been there since he was a boy. And he says now Detroit's booming, but we got a good laugh. I told him I was there in the 80s, and he said, man, I'm glad you survived, because he said it was hell. He worked for Chrysler all decades, quality control, and now just enjoys his days and living life with his grandchildren, and day by day. And beautiful person. Thank you, Herman. You made me laugh. I had to take a bus. I couldn't take the bike over the bridge. So I took a bus, and I got to Windsor, and then I just put my head down, and was heading to Leamington. And I got to this little town of Kingsville. I thought I was in Leamington, actually. And I saw a beer store, so I said, I gotta get, a beer. And Canada has these places called the beer store. I wandered in, and I started talking to Tyler, and he was just enamored by my story and my tale. And then we talked wheat beer, and all they had was Blue Moon, and he gave me a choice of the regular, and there was some other peach flavor or something. I said, I'll take one of each, and he insisted, I'm gonna pay, on me. What a beautiful young man, and really restored my faith in the younger generation. He really gets it. We talked about community and how it's dying, and people need to, step forward and insist that let's make community, and let's be people together, not just sitting in basements playing video games or doing all the stuff on the internet and shopping on the internet, etc. So thank you, Tyler. And I got to Leamington, for sure. Yeah, that's me. I'm heading along Lake Erie. I wore my scarf as a sign of solidarity with the people of Gaza. No overt statement. Just a quiet way of reminding whoever would see it of what's happening in the world, and to not forget. I swore that as a scholar of the Holocaust and the Shoah, and a student of that horrific event. And I still believe never forget, and part of never forgetting is remembering those suffering genocide and a Holocaust. Gaza is the Warsaw Ghetto. Gaza is Belsen. Gaza is a crime against humanity. And we need to remember that. You don't have to be a Jew to remember it. All of humanity needs to remember these crimes, same as Nagasaki and Hiroshima and so many others I could mention. But it was my quiet symbolism as I rode across the nation, the Caliph. And it came in handy to keep the dust out and the sweat and all that. I continued along Lake Erie and I got to the town of St. Thomas. And bloody, God, the hotels were so expensive. But I asked these two guys at Tim Hortons, the classic Canadian coffee shop. They were outside there chatting together, locals, Jerry and Ben. And they hooked me up with a cheaper hotel. Regular guys, we just had a good chit chat later in that evening, and I rolled into my hotel before it got dark. And at my hotel, I met Gurpreet Kaur. She's a Sikh, like so many across America and Canada, Sikhs or Indians doing all the hotel business. 99% of them were Indian. And Vaisakhi was the holiday on that day. I forget what day it was. It must have been April 11th, 12th, something like that. And she was so excited. She was going to go to temple in the morning, on Sunday morning, and meet all her friends. She goes to London, Ontario, to the temple. And she showed me her daughter who'd been to Korea and all her photo albums. I was so tired, I just wanted to get to my hotel room, but I also just wanted to hear all her stories. It was really beautiful, this small little hotel on the outskirts of St. Thomas. The next day I went through Elmer and then heading north to Woodstock and finally to Ingersoll. I'm going down Main Street. It's maybe 10, 11 in the morning on the weekend, and I see this like pile of bikes in the front yard, and oh my God, I had to stop and I took a picture, and then out walks Daryl from Ingersoll. And he repairs all these bikes, fixes them up and sells them for a little profit. And he says it helps out a lot of local people who can't afford, the newer bikes in the bike shops. He's never had a license, just rides a bike. Never a license in his whole life. Told me about some of his bike trips. And yeah, just a very quiet, unassuming guy. Doing the work that makes the world go round. Doing the good deeds. Thank you, Daryl, in Ingersoll. And there I am. I continued up to Paris and then north to Cambridge and trying to find my sister's place in Milton. And I finally arrived in Milton. Hugged my sister, drank a bottle of wine, fell asleep. Next morning I got up and I bought a pair of took the bike, bought a pair of running shoes at the local store and went to pay tribute to another beautiful person, deceased 7-8 years ago, Ed Whitlock, a good friend, one of the greatest runners in the world. He didn't start running till he was 50. My background's in marathoning, and running of all sorts. And I attended many events and things with Ed over the years, and he's a beautiful person. Read up about him, understated, from Milton. He ran all his training in this cemetery, and I did a loop of there's only 1 kilometer loop in the cemetery. And there is no finish line. Just like this trip, I found out there is no finish line. I'm already planning my next one. Thank you, Ed. And then the next day, finally, Scott at Milltown Cycle in Milton helped me with a few bolts and nuts that were missing on the bike, and he fixed my headset and got Rocky ready to be auctioned. So thank you, Scott, who's never ridden a Scott bicycle. I think they sell giant bicycles, and visit them in downtown Milton if you get a chance. It's a great shop. He's a great mechanic, and he got Rocky ready to be auctioned for some serious money to help out my hometown. But before I got to my hometown, I met my two greatest best friends in the world, the Cramp brothers. Kelly flew up from Bahamas. We climbed and stuffed Rocky in a rental car and roared north, 6-hour drive. Met Steve, who was playing at the Haileybury Legion the next day. And yeah, we just celebrated our lives together. We've been friends since we were like little kids, and just beautiful people. There's Jamie. She's from out Kennebec way, from the farm. She runs a big dairy farm near where I grew up, and she made us Easter dinner and then came to the event where we auctioned Rocky off, and it was a big comedy show with one of Canada's best comedians. Thank you, Jamie Cramp. Yep, we're Kennebeckers, that's for sure. I got a tour of the Legion, Haileybury Legion 54. All the money from the auction of Rocky went to the Haileybury Legion. They're doing such great work restoring this building, and it's a place central to the community. A lot of the small towns need something like this. They serve 200 people every day for breakfast. It's just amazing. It's like a gathering place for the whole community. And Don Martin is the current president, who kind of grabbed the bull by the horns and is doing a magnificent job keeping Haileybury alive, a place I lived in my younger years. Yeah, just warmed my heart. And we raised $575. Somebody bought Rocky for that amount, and everything going to Haileybury 54 Legion, the 54th Legion in Ontario. I did get to see, I rode my bike down to Burlington to see my brother. He passed a few days later, and it was something of a miracle that I got there in time to, he's just a few years older than me, but life hadn't been kind to him, and he was in a beautiful hotel room with loving people and well looked after, but how he lived his life and time was not on his side, and just glad that I got this time to, share an afternoon with him. And it was a miracle, because I'd been riding across America and Canada just to deal with the death of my mother. My mother's getting very frail. She's not dead, but she's getting very old. And I was trying to figure out how to deal with that, and then to discover, my brother on his deathbed was kind of something from left field. But as my great friend Kelly told me, life is for the living, and he's lived a lot of tragedy and knows. And there, I made it to my beautiful mother. She's still doing well. Got to the farm. There's the door and the wood and the house I built with my dad. They're still living in it. And I spent many nice days with my beautiful mom. She's a saint. She's an animal girl. The goat lady, everybody called her. And I love your mom. We just had Mother's Day, and every day's your day. talked about my grandfather. There we are. Spent some good afternoons with lots of great conversation about life and the blessed life we've had. So to you all, here's old Rocky on his way. The road is long, but the spirit is willing. Carry on, wayward brothers. There'll be peace where you come from.